Hi everyone, thanks for coming back for part 4. In my last video, I had just finished going over these last couple of tables that I'm going to show you right now, and I had pointed out how this phrase was coming up about skins dyed red, and I was explaining how it also came up in another table that I had done that I had shown in my Donald Trump video, where it had that same exact phrase. Over here it says skins dyed red, and on top of it it had the word dead encoded in ELS form, and it's coming up again. This was in Ezekiel 35, and it's coming up again in this table regarding the sixth seal that also talks about a headshot wound and information concerning that, as well as the sixth seal, whereas this one was talking about a third term, election, and a headshot wound. So they were both related by the headshot wound, even though they're completely different topics that I was searching for. But that term comes up in both, and this name comes up in both, and the headshot wound comes up in both, because as you can see here, I'll show you these tables, but I had searched for those words and they came up in this table as well. So there's definitely a connection between these two tables. And the table that I had just finished going over at the end of my last video was this one right here, where I had put in the words true and not true and lie. I had tried different combinations, and it's not very definitive, the answer, because it's all meshed in together, not with dead and not with lie. And the conclusion that I'm coming up with is that there's an element of truth to this, as well as a grand deception. And I think the explanation for that is here in Isaiah 14, which is what I was about to go over at the end of my last video. So I'm going to try to go over Isaiah 14, and it's going to be a little bit difficult to explain all of this, so I hope you just bear with me as I try to explain this. I haven't planned out how I'm going to explain this yet, so if you just bear with me, I'll explain this in just a second. Okay, first of all, I just want to say that Isaiah 14 is where you find the scripture right here in verse 12, where it says, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations?" Okay, this is a scripture that's often quoted, and I think there's more to it. Yeah, the next verse it says, "For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit." Okay, this is a scripture that many of us are familiar with, and I believe it's in this verse right here where it has the word heaven. This word is in Hebrew. This word is, well, it's actually not heaven. It's the word, I'm sorry, it's actually the word heights. So I need to pull up this one, 14:14. Okay, this is the word. The word for heights is this word right here, Bama. So this is a scripture that many of us are familiar with, where Satan exalts himself to the throne of God in heaven, and that's when he gets cast down. And then Jesus said that he saw Satan fall as lightning from heaven. And, this is when he said he would exalt himself to the heights, above the heights, which is where heaven is. So, and then this word shows up in the Hebrew when you look at this verse 14, where it talks about the heights of the clouds. It uses this word right here. So many of us are familiar with that phrase. Okay, and as we know from this video right here, and also from the scriptures in Ezekiel 39, which I just read in the last video, we know that Gog is going to go against Israel with a coalition of nations, and he's going to be destroyed there by God and be buried in the mountains of Israel. And a lot of people have discounted this testimony because of the understanding that has been given by man about these events and the timeline and how all this takes place. So many people have discounted that Gog can be the Antichrist, and a lot of people think this is going to happen at the end of 7 years and so forth. And I can explain more about that later as far as the timing of these events, but what I want to point out right now is that according to Ezekiel 39 and according to this testimony, Gog is going to be killed and he's going to be buried in the mountains of Israel. Okay, so the question is, how can Gog be the Antichrist if he's going to die? Well, I think the answer to that is in is in Isaiah 14. And I think the best way to explain it is to just go through the scriptures and just read it from the beginning so you can understand the context of what is being said. So I'm just going to start with verse 1. Okay, it says, "For the Lord will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel, and set them in their own land, and the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob." Okay, so Israel's going to go back into the land, and then the strangers, which I believe would be the Gentiles, shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave, that's an important word, to the house of Jacob. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids, and they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. Okay, this is when Israel is restored, and they once again possess the land. Okay, and they're joined with the strangers when this happens. "And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow, and from fear, and from hard bondage wherein thou wast made to serve." Okay, rest from thy sorrow. This is what is talked about in the book of Revelation, where Jesus dries every tear and he gives us rest and everything is restored. Okay, then it goes on to say that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon. Okay, many of us are starting to understand who the king of Babylon is, and say, "How hath the oppressor ceased?" Okay, this is the end of the king of Babylon. "The golden city ceased." Okay, "The Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked, and the scepter of the rulers. He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke. He that ruled the nations in anger is persecuted, and none hindereth. The whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into singing. Okay, this is the rapture. Okay, this is the restoration. Yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, Since thou art laid down, no feller is come up against us. Okay, this is very interesting, this verse right here. And this has to do with the rapture. And it's hard to explain this, but well, let me just go over this word right here. This word right here, it says, since thou art laid down. This word is the Hebrew word shakab. And this word is a word, I'm trying to pull it up. It's just being a little slow. Okay, this word has connotations of sexual relations. It's the confirming of the covenant. Okay, it's basically saying, since the covenant, which is a euphemism, of course. Okay, since a covenant is confirmed, there's rest now. Okay, and we know Jesus is the one who's going to confirm the covenant. In Daniel 9:27, it's Jesus who confirms the covenant. He came at his first coming as a bridegroom for 3.5 years, and the bride, which was then just Israel in the beginning, was in the bride chamber with the bridegroom for 3.5 years, and then the bridegroom made a new covenant which would include the Gentiles. And he confirms both halves of the covenant. We're waiting on the second half to be fulfilled. And I can try to explain more of that later because I don't want to get off track here. But this is the confirming of the covenant. This is the second half now being confirmed. So this has to do with the rapture. It has to do with the restoration. Okay? And at the same time, see, and it's just like, let me just show you my second Advent table. Let me pause this for a second. Okay, in this table, if you watch the video that I had done on this, you'll see that I had explained how the top part of this table seems to be describing the rapture and what is going to be taking place in heaven above, whereas the bottom part seems to be describing what's going to be taking place in earth below. And these things apparently seem to happen at the same time. So to get more details on that, you would have to watch the video on this table, because obviously I'm not going to go over this table again, but the same imagery is depicted here in Isaiah 14. The first half of, well, it's actually less than half, but the first part of Isaiah 14 seems to be describing the rapture and what has taken place with the rapture. And then starting from verse 9, it's talking about Satan being cast out and what's going to be taking place on earth. And so I'll start reading the next verse here. Okay, in verse 9 it says, Hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It hath raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. Okay, so this is after Gog has died and the oppressor has ceased, and he goes to the underworld, basically. And I'm going to explain this more a little bit in the next video because I'm about to run out of time. So I'll just pick back up with verse 9 in the next video. Thank you.